All right, all right. Welcome back to another episode of the Behind the Back podcast, 49ers Post Game Edition. Wow, oh wow. What a up and down game the 49ers just played. This was the game that the 49ers needed. I will say that. They needed a gritty game to get back on track and ultimately needed to come out on top. And they did just that. The 49ers defeated the Seattle Seahawks 36-24 in Seattle and have tied the Seattle Seahawks in terms of record. And it wasn't the prettiest win, but there's positives to take out of it. A win is a win, especially at this point in the season. And look, you have 10 days before you see the Kansas City Chiefs for another rematch. And to be able to get a W here in Seattle and take those 10 days and rest as much as you can prior to that rematch, it means a lot. So this game started off really well. Defense was doing great and offense was clicking early on. The Seahawks went down the field on their first possession and looked like they were going to punch the ball in, at the very least take a field goal. And Geno just completely overthrew his wide receiver. And Malik Mustafa got a pick on the 1 yard line. And it was a great play. And I say that, Geno completely overthrew him. Well, Nick Bosa was applying insane pressure on him. So, that'll definitely make a quarterback like Geno make a mistake like that. And so it was great to see Malik really capitalize off of that. And the 49ers came away with that. Mason broke away on the next drive for the Niners there and got us into the red zone. It was the first attempt at the red zone that we would see for the 49ers in this game, first of a few of them. And unfortunately, came up short again and were forced to kick a field goal. So early on, I talked about with Marcos in this last episode about these red zone struggles and just how painful they are to have to watch this Niners team be, to be honest with you, the best offensive team in the league inside the 20s. But when it comes to that 20-yard line and that red zone, this team does something weird. Marcos texted me during this game and he was like, this is weird, man. Like, this team inside the 20 is weird. And it's true. Like, even now I'm not much more confident in it because there was a few trips in this game and a few that came up shy of a touchdown. However, the Niners did punch in two of them, and actually three of them if you count the one at the very end of the game. And two of the ones that really count for me are the two that Brock threw just awesome ball to George Kittle on both of them. And for me, those two touchdowns felt like Niner football. And if I'm being honest, even that very last one where Isaac Guerrero breaks down the entire field, putting this game on ice, comes up short of the goal line, slides up short, and then Juice just punches it in. The play that they ran was a fullback dive. And so that felt like a Niner play because you don't see that play call much anymore. Fullbacks really don't have that kind of a role in the offense, at least, at this point in the game, what you see. Typically, they're out there blocking if you have a fullback. And so for Shanny to draw up a play and have Juice run it in and give the game ball to his wife, it was great. And it felt like Niner football. And I think a lot of this game for me felt like Niner football. Now, there were issues in this game that I need to air out here and shed some light to. And obviously Marcos and I will break that down a little bit deeper this week, or rather next week when we talk about it. But the defense, specifically the secondary in this game, was awful. And again, I question a lot of the play calls that Nick Sorensen is calling in any given day, any given week. It's like the Niners they'll string together 2-3 drives where it's, maybe a 3-and-out, or they force some punts, or even they get a takeaway. And then they'll come back out the next possession and just lay an egg and let a team go 97 yards, 98 yards, 75 yards. And it's getting to a point where it's like, are we consistently bad defensively, or are we inconsistently good? Because it's flashes of both. And at this point, obviously you're dealing with a lot of injuries, which I will definitely talk about here in a second. But even just having all your guys ready, not just the starters, but the guys who are coming off the bench, second and third stringers, like, you should be having these guys ready to go. They should absolutely understand, what the play calls are, their roles in the defense, and they need to be able to communicate out there. Mind you, Seattle is the loudest place in the league to play a football game in. And for a lot of these guys, especially the young guys who we leaned on a lot in this game due to injuries, I think it was an experience for them. They were struggling to hear themselves think, let alone talk and communicate with their teammates. And you could tell a lot of that was going on, and you were starting to see more and more hand gestures and motions and stuff that kind of indicated what needed to happen. But as far as injuries are concerned, this game was a mess, man. Jordan Mason started off this game phenomenal, and Kyle was using him like I wanted to see him use Jordan. I wanted to see him use him a lot more than he was, at least the last week. And early on in this game, he was really starting to give him more touches. He was giving him more opportunities. And he started this game, early on with 9 carries, going for 73 yards. And it looked like it was going to be another one of those just feast fests for Jordan Mason. Well, unfortunately, he went down with a shoulder injury after an awesome run and wouldn't return to this game. He had it all taped up coming out of halftime. He looked like he was good to go. Shanahan even told reporters, like, he's going to be good to go. We're going to get him back out there. That's my plan, to have him back out there. He never touched the field again. So I'm concerned. Obviously you have 10 days. 10 days is a good amount of time for rest before the next game. But, I'm just hoping there's nothing serious going on with his shoulder. Next was Malik Mustafa, who was having a great game. And he went down, didn't return. Aaron Banks gets an IV at halftime and ultimately succumbed to cramps. And so next, it just felt like, who's next? Well, unfortunately, Debo ends up hurting his hand, goes out for a play, and it looks like what's he going to do? Is he going to go to the blue tent? He ended up coming back in the game. Kittle took a shot, ended up coming back in the game. And then the very end of the game, Matthew Wright, our brand new kicker, who was replacing our injured kicker, Jake Moody, Matthew Wright goes down with an injury after a terrible tackle, which he shouldn't have to make. And on that note, I need to discuss the worst part of this 49ers team right now. And it's not the red zone issues. It's the special teams unit. I dove deep into the red zone flaws, issues, whatever the case, whatever you want to call it. I dove deep into the red zone stuff for the 49ers this last week. I'm going to be doing the exact same thing this weekend with the special teams, because whatever is going on with that special teams unit, it needs to stop. I don't have the stats pulled up, but I can guarantee you we're probably bottom 5 in the league statistically in special teams. You come out of halftime, you get the ball at halftime, right? And halftime score is 16-3. You have a chance to ice the game because you stopped the Seahawks right before the half and held them to 3 points. And mind you, it wasn't pretty, but you stopped them. 16-3. Great. You're up 13 points. Go out there, get a touchdown. You have the ball first. They go out, get into the red zone. Awesome touchdown to George Kittle. Beautiful ball from Purdy. It was everything you wanted. And then the very next play, not the next possession, the very next play, the Niners let up a 97-yard kick return. That's unacceptable. And at that point, it's 23-10. And obviously it's a 13-point game, but you've let the loudest fan base and the loudest stadium into the game. which they haven't been in all game long. And at that point, the Seahawks rode that momentum for essentially the next 24 minutes of the game until ultimately the Niners pulled something out and got a W. So when I'm looking at the inconsistencies in this team, it's execution, it's getting guys ready for game days, this and that, whatever the case. What has been consistently bad all year long has been that special teams unit. And we've lost 2 kickers who are extremely valuable to the 49ers team that cannot score in the red zone, it seems like. You've lost 2 kickers because they've had to go and make a tackle. So something needs to give there. But that's really the main negative that I can take out of this game. And it's got to get addressed quick. I have faith that it will, but it needs to get figured out very quickly because you're going on week 7. You got the Chiefs, and then you got a bye. And after the bye, you probably get Christian McCaffrey back. I don't think you see Christian McCaffrey next week, but you have Christian McCaffrey back after that. At that point, as long as you're sustainable, if you're decent as a special teams unit, I think that offense is going to carry you, and you'll be okay. Let me get into my game balls here. So first game ball is going to go to Nick Bosa because I've just seen it all season long. He just doesn't take a play off. And he sees quadruple teams sometimes. Dude he will always give his all 100% of the time. And in this one, he had at least 8 pressures and was just a menace out there. He was responsible for, I think, both of Geno's picks, but at the very least one of them. But I want to say both because he was in Geno's head. He was getting back there almost at will and getting into the face of Geno a lot. And so at that point, as a quarterback, you're always accounting for this guy. You're always looking at his side like, where's he coming from? Where's he coming from? I'm just going to get rid of this. And then you're getting rid of it into one of the 49ers' hands. So shout out Nick Bosa. Just all-out effort, phenomenal game, playing his heart out. I could not be more happy with what I saw from Nick Bosa in this one. Second game ball is going to go to my guy, Fred Warner. Just continuing to be one of the best defensive players out there, especially linebackers. And I think he is the best defensive player in the league right now. He's just consistently a menace, consistently putting pressure on not just a quarterback, not just a running game, but the entire offensive unit, because you have to game plan around him. You don't game plan through him. You game plan around Fred Warner. And yet he still gets back there every single time. He led the team in tackles, led the team in assisted tackles, and he almost had a pick in this one. He was punching the ground afterward, and I was worried. I shouldn't be worried. It's Fred Warner, but based on all the injuries, I was like, please don't injure your hand. Please don't injure your hand. But he had another great game, and he had another forced fumble. Unfortunately, it wasn't recovered by the Niners, but just continues to just wreak havoc out there. And that was exactly what I needed from him. The last game ball is going to go to, it's actually going to go to Brock. Now, he didn't have an incredible game or anything. He was 18 for 28 on the game, 255 yards, 3 touchdowns, but played a completely clean game. There were no interceptions, and he really only had a few wayward passes. The rest was just honestly good defense. What I'm handing him this ball for is because I talked about how loud Seattle is to play in it, and he's gone to Seattle 2 times in his career now and come out with a win. He did it last year on Thanksgiving where he ate turkey in front of all those Seattle fans at the end of that game after they just ran through Seattle. And then he did it this year as well. And I'm, from a standpoint of a leader, he's doing that. He's leading this team in a very loud environment. It's a tough environment to get a win in no matter what team you are. And no matter how how much of a veteran you are in the league. I know people are starting to consider him a veteran, right? But he's still inside of his first contract. He's still getting $900K a year. So, from that standpoint, just massive shout out to Brock. He gets my game ball for this one because he just continued to lead the Niners down the field in this one, did everything he was asked to do. And when he needed to make a play, convert a down, whatever the case may be, he was there and he was doing it. He used his legs a lot in this one. He had 19 yards for 4 carries. And I know that's not a lot, but those 19 yards were hard-earned yards. Those were, I would argue, harder earned yards than Isaac Guerendo's, who went 99 yards. And I say that only because, Isaac had basically a 70-yarder at the very end of the game. But I'm really pleased with what I'm seeing out of Brock, and what a response after just taking a lot of criticism about his second half statistics throughout this last week. I do have an honorable mention in this one before I wrap things up, and that's Malik Mustafa. He was having an amazing game, a really awesome game, a breakout game for him before he went out with that injury. And it was unfortunate that he did, because he was going to be my game ball guy in this one. Like, I was going to be able to hand him the first one, and unfortunately went out with that injury. So, we'll monitor that. We'll see what that looks like. Hopefully it's nothing serious and he's out there in 10 days against the Chiefs. So, honestly, final thoughts on this one. It almost slipped away again, but it didn't. The 49ers did find a way to get things done in Seattle in a gritty game. And whether they had everything going for them on a physical football level, or nothing at all going from a ref standpoint, because how do you review a play that was clearly, anyway, that'll be a discussion for next week. I'm just thrilled to get a win. This feels good. This team has been struggling, but getting a win, regardless of whether you're struggling or not, always feels good. And there were a lot of positives to take out of this game. So, I have been Benny the Jet. This has been the Behind the Back podcast, Niners Post Game, Week 6 edition. You can hit us up at behindthebackpod13@gmail.com. Hit us up at any of our socials above. And for any of our audio listeners, you can see any of the links down below. We appreciate y'all. We love y'all. I'll see you guys soon. Peace.